Welcome to self-discoverywisdom.com, formerly known as Self-Discovery Media. On these podcasts, you're going to hear people who speak from the heart. They've taken the journey in life. Many things have happened to them, but they've changed it to happening for them. And in their strength, their courage, they've discovered their abilities and their wisdom, and they are now sharing it here with you. Do enjoy each show. We bring it to you with love and knowing that it's going to help you on your journey of life. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Ignite Your Heart and Soul right here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my guest today is Victor Acquista. He is a writer and has written some wonderful books, some fiction, some fact. There's a wonderful piece we're going to be talking about today. The essence is in presence, embodying spiritual and shifting your perception from your egoic self-expression to your divine self. We'll be talking about the three H's, head, heart, hands, and the three A's, authentic alignment, action, the difference between content and context and living more authentic life, and the way the pillars of gratitude, peace, trust, and love are essential. We're looking at each individual unique embodiment souls with valuable experience to share. Would you light a lamp only to place it beneath the table? Sharing your light gives meaning and purpose to our lives, and in doing so, we illuminate each other. Dr. Victor is a retired primary care physician and medical executive, international award writer, author, speaker, educator, imaginer, conscious evolutionary, wanderer, and ponderer. And his journey is one of ongoing unfolding awareness. He believes in extended human capacities and the fullness of our potential. And in his writing, it flows from the heart space, celebrating our shared humanity with intent of raising awareness and elevating our consciousness. And that, to me, is music to my ears, because it's all about raising that consciousness. I feel that in so many ways, humanity is behind where we're meant to be as far as raising our consciousness, our frequency, our vibration, our hertz, which anybody particularly follows. And when we are truly conscious of our part in this human evolution, then we really actually do understand that kindness, caring, consideration, compassion, wonderment, which I'll constantly talk about, and love is really the key to that higher consciousness. So welcome to the show, Victor.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah. It's wonderful to be able to share presence together. And thank you to your viewership, your listeners. I hope that we can share some insights with them that they'll find valuable, and we'll give them some things to think about and open their hearts.
Opening the hearts. That's the first key. You know, the soul, that wisdom, universal, God, universe, spirit, source, energy, whatever you wish to call it, speaks through the soul and it becomes our compass of information, the wisdom. But it can't reach our heads until our hearts are open to receive it and our spirit knows how to use it in action for the mind to find the clarity it needs when it needs it. And we're so being governed over the last, I don't know, few hundred years of everything is mind, and that we have forgotten about the intellectualism of the soul, the heart, and the spirit, and that when we come from that space and we feel the knowledge, we truly do actually understand what it's here for. Do you feel that way?
Oh, absolutely. It really speaks to the topic that I want to, maybe do a little bit of a deep dive into.
Mm-hmm.
And although it will sound strange, in some ways you have to lose your mind to find your heart.
Yes.
Um,
Yes, yes,
and
yes.
uh, um, the way I conceptualize this is we have two operating systems. We have the heart-centered or soul-centered, sometimes referred to as the higher self or the
Mm-hmm.
true self. And I'm cautious about using the word higher because it suggests some sort of a hierarchy.
Yeah.
But let's just go
Evolutionary self.
with that soul self.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the egoic self, which is really wrapped up in the identity that we have created about ourselves, and other people have helped to create that
Mm,
identity. And if you use a film analogy of we are the screenwriter, the actor, the producer,
mm,
and the director, as well as the viewer or the observer. So the first set of things are how we participate, and the last is really how we observe.
mm,
A lot of people get lost in this story. They think that who they are and the true essence of their being is whatever label or role that is. It could be father, it could be doctor in my case, it
mhm,
could be a set of achievements that are experiences that you've
mm,
had that are part of the story. We incarnated as souls into a human body,
mhm,
and we're here to have experiences. And sometimes we mistake those experiences cumulative into our true identity, which is not the case. When I talk about the three H's,
mhm.
head, heart, and hands, the hands are just the action part of you.
Yes,
They'll,
yes.
they'll do whatever the heart tells them to do
Mhm,
or whatever the head tells them to do. And if you think of driving a car, most of the time in the driver's seat is the head.
mhm,
There's many times when the heart is saying, no, you need to make a left here. You
yeah.
need to, no, you're going the wrong way. And
Mhm,
we're not listening. So once we begin to listen to the heart and open up to its wisdom, and then get comfortable in the passenger seat with our head,
yeah, yeah.
that's where we get to the three A's of authenticity, alignment, and action. And again, action is like what the hands are doing.
Mhm,
But when we align authentically with our true self, and that's our operating system, then we are more fully embodying our spiritual self. I'm not in the camp of, oh, the ego is bad. We have to
right.
destroy the ego. We have to dismantle it. No, I'm of the opinion that as the ego expands into this soul self,
Mhm,
it's the human experience is much richer
yeah.
and much more joyful, because I think that our divine essence, our soul self,
Mhm.
is its natural state is one of love and
Yes,
joy
yes.
and compassion and all of these things that we are somehow seeking to have more of, but often we're seeking those in externals.
Yeah.
So if I have this, or I'm able to create this circumstance in my life, I will experience more joy, or I will be happier, or I will be more abundant. There's a famous book, can't recall the author. It's called The Sacred and the Profane.
Mhm,
And I understand making that distinction, but I think that when you get to the point where you can see everything that you call mundane is sacred.
mhm.
The sacred is there all the time,
Yes.
and it our ability to perceive that is um, impaired, handicapped by our conditioning,
Mm,
by our ways of thinking and perceiving everything around us. So we have perceptual limitations. Um, if I'm going too fast, because I could go on and I want to
yes,
give.
no, no. And actually, I do want to jump into a few points. So we'll um, the ego. I feel when the ego derives from feeling less than, right? When it's driven from that point, it's always trying to prove itself. And nothing is ever enough because the ego is always feeling judged, always feeling less than, and then it becomes more and more and more, and we're listening to that ego, which is leading us down the wrong path. But I think when you do work from the inside out and you become aligned with the soul, heart, and spirit,
Mm.
and mind and body, and you become one, you know how to stand tall in who you are, in that conviction of who you are. And I think that is a different form of ego because you know it's not you, it's the entire of you, it's the universe and everything of you. So that's how I look at ego.
Yes, and I think that expanding on that a little bit, if you accept, and these are belief systems, but I think they're belief systems that we share.
Mm-hmm.
If you accept that the essence of divinity, God stuff, is in us,
Yes.
and that is infinite.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing you can add to infinite to make it
Mm.
more infinite, and
Right.
there's nothing that you can subtract from
Right.
infinite to make it less infinite. And as the egoic self begins to embody that soul self,
Mm-hmm.
you again have a different experience of life, and the freedom and the limitations that come from judgments and
Mm-hmm.
false belief systems,
Yes.
which are often ways that we separate and divide,
Mm-hmm.
from one another, when in fact we're all aspects of the same consciousness.
Exactly.
And so we share that. When Jesus says, "Love your neighbor as yourself,"
Mm-hmm.
I think of that as, yes, that's
Yeah.
because that is myself. That is
And it doesn't
another
mean you have to
aspect of
always agree,
myself.
right? It doesn't mean that you have to always, be hunky dory with everyone, but it's to understand that, we are a collective. And there's going to be some part of those collectives where you resonate more with because you're on that particular wavelength. And,
Sure.
and there's, if you've listened to my shows, I'm always drawing the analogy of the orchestra. What instrument are we? We learn to discover what that is, how to play it. We can play as a soloist beautifully. However, when we decide to join an orchestra, each in our own strength and abilities, but decide to work harmoniously together, we transcend. We become so much more, but we don't lose the identity of our instrument. And, we may favor that instrument. We don't have anything against the violin,
Mm.
but it's not your instrument. So you respect it, but it's not necessarily where you're going to connect with. And I think that's a lot of the times people think that when we're talking about love thy neighbor, you may not like them, but you can accept them for who they are, because that's who they are. And I think accepting each one another for who we are without judgment is a big one that we need to address.
Yes, and I think it starts with ourselves.
Yes. Oh,
Accepting
yes.
ourselves for who we are and loving ourselves. God's love is unconditional, and
Hmm.
that means there's nothing you can do to make God love you more. There's nothing you can do to make God love you less.
And God isn't here to persecute you. We do that very well for ourselves.
Yeah, and I agree.
Mm,
Some people and their behavior, it's hard to like,
yeah.
but you can see past those human restrictions, egoic aspects of them, and see the divine essence with them.
Hmm.
Then you're perceiving, their true identity, their true self.
Yes.
And there is not only an affinity, but a feeling of love towards that.
Right.
Um, and in many respects, I think it takes time to begin to deconstruct not the ego, but the uh-oh.
Your light went out. There you go.
We had lightning, and so my whole
Oh,
screen went blank
oh
for a moment.
no.
But we're back.
We're back. We're back. We're back. We're not meant to be going anywhere. And if we do, we'll be back.
Yeah. So this brings me to something that I think is really important. It has to do with perception and expression.
Hmm.
And I'm going to use a very, very simple example. I have a lake across the street from me. I walk around the lake all the time. We have alligators. And so
Mm.
I'm looking around the lake and I see on the opposite bank what I think is an alligator. And so my reality is based on the perception, my whatever photons hit my retina, they hit my retina, and I interpreted that as an alligator. But as I drew closer, I saw, no, that's just a corrugated drain pipe, a storm drain pipe, because that's blackish and the alligators are blackish gray. And so from a distance, they might look similar.
Mhm.
But I created a reality because I misinterpreted something. And we are misinterpreting things and making up stories that
Yes.
then we generate our actions
Hmm.
that are really based on incorrect interpretations of what we perceive.
Not the whole story, so to speak,
Yes,
right? What is it, back to? Is it fact or is it fiction? And only when you got closer did you actually understand what it is. And I used to have a course called The View of Life, and it's a metaphorical journey that I take people through. And the interesting thing is for them to discover at the end of it is how much they do not pay attention to the little things in life. And those little things add up to the clarity they need in order to make the bigger decisions. But we're
right.
so busy preconceiving, we're not paying attention to what is.
Right. And that's, the whole notion of being in the moment, being
Yes.
present in the moment, essence in presence,
Hmm.
having your soul self essence and bringing that present in from one moment to the next is, I think, a marvelous way of not only cultivating self-love, but cultivating more and more awareness
Hmm.
and experiencing life from a place of heightened awareness and appreciation. So the other half of that from perception is expression, and
Hmm.
I'm just going to read something that I keep
Hmm.
on my desk um, because it speaks to my from my heart to my heart.
Right. Well, that's a great place to be.
Be filled with love, let it overflow. You are a fountainhead of love. Do nothing to restrain this, to hold it back. Do not try and parcel out your love. Can you contain the air? The oceans? Why would you want to try? So let it be with your love at all times, under all circumstances. Love with the fullness of your being, because that's who you are in the essence of your being, a creature of love. You are happiest when you are the most loving, because at those moments you give expression to your being. Express yourself more fully. So
100% agreed to all of that.
yeah, I just think that our conditioning
Hmm.
is often um, around some fear-based things, but we
Yes.
want to we want to hold back our true self because we're afraid. We're afraid someone is going to criticize us, or
Hmm.
we won't be accepted, or there's something about ourselves that we think is either unworthy
Yep.
or not something to be shared. It's too private. And yet, if you accept and I think many of your listeners do understand that we are creatures of love.
Yes, we are.
Why would we ever want to hold that back? How does that
Isn't what we're seeking all the time is, we're seeking them, but we are the love.
yes? So, to me, when is love ever the wrong answer? It's like
Right.
never. And
Exactly.
And then if we can suspend the judgment on everyone else,
Hmm.
it's so liberating because then you don't have to think, oh, is this someone I can love? Is this someone I can open up to and share love with? Is this someone the just in the same way we make judgments about ourselves being worthy or unworthy,
Yep.
we're saying, is this someone who's worthy of me loving? Well, if you answer yes, then it's very, very liberating because you don't have to try to sort out who's worth loving and who's not. I
Right.
like to think that, God loves us all and
Yep.
he's not stressing over, well, the common things, we can fill in many of the biases people have. Oh, I love that one more because
Yeah.
they're this faith or that faith, or they didn't sin yesterday, but today I don't love them as much because they did some bad thing. It's silly when you
Yeah.
think about it, but the
That's not
story,
love. That is certainly not love. Because love is, I call it fluidity. The wind and the water, and the trees, everything must be in flow, right? It
yes,
has to be fluid. The oxygen and the blood and the water in our body has to be in flow. When it's stagnant, that's when we get ill. And so when we are that loving flow, it will go where it needs to go. And it will be received how it's meant to be received when we receive it. But it's kind of let go of the conditioning of what love should be and
yes.
just be the essence of love and let it flow. And it may come back to you. It always comes back to you in some form or other, but don't dictate. Take dictation and expectation out of the equation.
Yeah, because often when people are talking about love, they're talking about conditional love.
Yes,
I am loving towards you so you can be loving towards me,
yes.
or
If you do this or
some,
if you do that. Yeah.
yes,
Hmm.
exactly, exactly. And I mean that's you know that's good, but we're capable of so much more
Yeah.
when we think in terms of unconditional love. And you can think of it as connection to source. The more fully we're connected to source,
Hmm.
or loving we are, the more we're able to express that. And I think the more we're able to perceive that.
I call the heart the love generator. The more
Yeah.
you love, the more it generates. I remember holding my newborn grandson, who's getting married this week, um, and holding him, and then having my 21-month-old daughter sitting next to me. And I thought when she was born, can I love any more or any more deeply than this? And then feeling that overwhelming love for him, I had a moment of kind of guilt. How can I feel this overwhelming love for him and her? And it was like, stop being stupid. You've got more love to give. This is just showing you how much love is in you. And of course, then I had a third child, and that love was, overflowing as well. I think what we do, we put limitations on our capacity to love. And I think if we understand that the heart is the love generator, and the more we love, the more it generates more love for us to love.
Yes, and it's hard to measure.
Hmm.
It's not like we have a yardstick that
Yeah.
can say, "Oh, look, this is more love than yesterday."
Yes,
I mean, I just think it's infinite in its capacity, and we have an infinite capacity really
we
to
do.
to
We
be
do.
overflowing with love. There's a fountainhead within
We
us.
are, if we allow ourselves to be, right? I mean, it doesn't mean you always have to like, because you may disagree with something, but that doesn't mean that you let love stop loving, right? I mean, that's just part of life.
Well, I think that's a good segue into this notion of content and
Hmm.
context. And what I mean by that, I can quickly illustrate with a quick little story.
Hmm.
And I'm going to use a man, but you can use a woman. Doesn't matter. Um, Man has a really hard day at work. His boss chews him out. He gets in an argument with his coworkers. He's late for a report. It's really been horrible. He hits a big traffic jam on the way home. And when he gets home and he opens the door, there's toys all over the floor. The kids are yelling. His spouse calls out, "Oh, dinner's going to be late." So he doesn't react well,
Right.
as opposed to the same guy who's had a wonderful day at work. His boss praised him. Actually, he got a raise. His coworkers threw him a little party. No traffic on the way home. He sailed home. He opens the door. The kids are going crazy. There's toys on the floor. And his spouse says, "Dinner's going to be late." So he reacts very differently because the context in one circumstance is he's in a bad mood.
Yeah, exactly.
And the context in the other circumstances, he's in a good mood. However, both of those contexts are drawn from external
Yeah.
events.
Yes.
And the kind of context that I'm talking about in the four pillars that you mentioned in the intro, those being gratitude, peace, trust, and love,
Hmm.
are internal, contextual places from which to experience life. And they are all aspects of the soul self.
Hmm.
When we are in that operating system, um, there's almost always a sense of gratitude.
Yes.
Everything everything is a gift, and it's a gift freely given and freely available, and everything is sacred in the moment when you have that awareness. And how could you not feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude with that?
Right.
um Peace.
Hmm.
I there's the prayer of serenity, I think it is. Go placidly amidst the noise and the haste.
Hmm.
Well, how do you go placidly amidst the noise and the haste? Well, you're just connected to that place of peace within.
Yes.
That
Yes.
deep well of peace.
Right. The
That
core, right? The center core of you.
and I think in terms of the old toys, maybe you remember them from, I don't know, the 60s or 70s, a Weeble. A Weeble will wobble, but it won't
Yeah.
fall down because it's
Exactly.
an egg-shaped thing.
Hmm.
And the center of gravity is such that whatever the challenges that are trying to push it
Hmm.
over, the vicissitudes of life, the challenges, we should talk about challenges and reframe those as opportunities. We'll swing back to that. Um, but when you are operating from that place of peace,
Hmm.
then the content in your life doesn't unravel you, doesn't cause
Right.
you, because that content is just part of the story.
Exactly. Exactly.
And how we deal with that content, a lot of people, and I know it's been on some of the shows that I listen to, and so many people have said things happen for us,
Yeah.
not to us.
Hmm.
And if you reframe the challenging circumstances of your as opportunities, then you realize that you have a choice.
Exactly.
How in this moment can I choose to operate from my soul self, from my higher self, as opposed to, my more conditioned self?
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's easy to get upset about things, but when you are connected in this soul-centered way, then the content just doesn't cause you to lose feeling centered.
Right.
And
Right. I'd love to keep on that one for a moment before we go any further because I think it's one that really does throw us off quite considerably. How do we go back to core? Where we're centered, where we feel balanced. I have a wonderful monkering interview that takes people into Times Square to meditate amongst the chaos. And
mm,
when, we tell people to go and meditate, but that's in quiet, right? What do we do when we're in the chaos and the noise? How do you find that center and not be bothered by the noise, but be productive about what you can do within the noise? And I think we're not taught that. We're not conditioned with that in any way. We're kind of almost taught to get pissed off about it and get mad about it because that's kind of been the mainstream. I look at emotions as having an indication of how you feel to something that is happening.
mm.
Look at that emotion. Does it need to be spent? Does it need to be addressed? But don't become emotional about it. Because I think that's what really happens. People get blown up in the emotion, are so caught up in the emotion, they're actually forgetting what the hell they were emotional about in the first place.
Well, I think what you described is creating a distance between
Hmm.
this thing and look at it objectively. and sort of decouple that reactivity.
Yeah.
How we respond is always a choice. And I actually have a piece, it's a chapter in a book, but I turned it into a podcast and I posted it. It's on my columns that are with Veritas. It's one of the pieces I wrote there called The Deep Well of Peace. And I
Hmm.
make suggestions, and some of the things just off the top of my head that I remember is to have a sacred space in your immediate environment
Hmm.
that you can go to and sort of reconnect to that still point within. But to also have that in your mind, I call them a happy place or a power
Hmm.
place, so that when you're in Times Square or when you're in a traffic jam or when you're in, you can visualize that place. And for me, it happens to be in a spa with running water and
Uh-huh.
beautiful spa music. And that's one of the places. And I can go there anytime. I
Yes.
can go there
Yes.
anytime. And I also think it's helpful to develop a conversational aspect to your two selves.
Yes.
You can ask your higher self, hey, or you can just say, this is really tough for me right now. Help me out.
Hmm.
The help is always there. It's
It
it's
is.
there for the asking. You can say, "Hey, I don't like where my car is going right now, so I'm going to move over to the passenger side. You take the wheel."
Yeah.
And
The
it
the surrender and trust. I call that allow.
allow the
Hmm.
energy of allowing,
Mm. Mm.
trying to control stuff that we can't control anyway.
Right.
It generates so much anxiety and so
Yes.
much worry and
Hmm.
so much stress that, and it's beyond our control anyway. So when we surrender,
Mm.
when we allow, it's like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna be in that place of allowing. Um,
Then it's taking the deep breath. I think what happens for a lot of people, and I'll put myself in that too, when I get overstressed with something, what happens? You almost forget to breathe, right? Breath is held, body is clenched.
hmm,
You're in that anxiety, and it's like, take that deep breath in. I surrender. Take
right.
the wheel.
Well, a
You know?
belly breath will activate the parasympathetic nervous
Hmm.
system. The sympathetic nervous system is really associated with chest breathing and
Hmm.
this sort of thing. And
Hmm.
that's all tied into the fight and flight response and
Yes.
what have you. So, yes. And so, we even
Yes.
smiling
Find ways to smile.
activates.
Puppy dogs, children, right? Something you can laugh at. Yeah.
Yeah, no, laughter is
Yes.
great, de-stressor, but it's also healthy.
Yeah.
And we can all remind ourselves that life is too serious to take seriously.
Yeah.
Uh, and
And
it's like,
especially in the environment we're in right now.
oh
There,
my,
there is so much that is kind of like, all you can do is laugh at it.
yeah. Well, it's actually a good bridge to talking about trust,
Hmm.
because to me, when you have trust, you have no fear. Trust is all about allowing,
Yes.
being in the present moment.
Yes.
And a lot of people say, well, hope. Hope to me is sugar-coated fear. It's,
Mm.
I hope this doesn't happen is really the flip side of the coin that it is, I'm afraid this is going to happen.
Yes. Yes.
And so I have to remind myself when I maybe feel anxious or worried about something is just to be in a place of trust.
It's
Because
the knowingness, right?
well, if you believe, as we said before, that things are happening for us,
Hmm.
if we believe in the wisdom of the
Hmm.
higher self, the true self, then we can say, okay, this is an opportunity.
Hmm.
Let me think about what how I can be my best self in this moment. And being full of fear, being
Yes.
full of worry, being full of anxiety, contracting into that state,
Hmm.
that vibrational energy that I'm putting out, that doesn't serve anyone. That
No.
serves no one. Um,
Especially yourself.
Least of all yourself, right?
Yes.
You finished my sentence before um,
You
so
kind of look at, suffering is optional. We all struggle,
yes.
right? And there's some people that struggle more than others. But
Hmm.
when you go into suffering, I feel that you're almost giving up. I'm suffering. But when you go, this is a struggle, but I'm finding my way out.
Yeah, I use the example of pain and suffering. You
Hmm.
can have pain, but it's
Yeah,
everything that's attached to the pain that's
right.
the suffering is. It's like, oh, I tore the meniscus in my knee. Now it's hard for me to drive. Now I can't play tennis. I like to play tennis. Oh, how is this going to affect my vacation? That's where all the suffering is. The pain is just in your knee.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Exactly. We
The
dramatize it.
right, it's everything we associate with that.
Hmm.
Yes, we have a lot of painful life circumstances,
Yes,
a
we do.
lot of trauma,
Yes,
but it's everything that's attached to it that is really where the suffering and the true struggling comes from. But the good news is when you begin to see and reframe things in this context of, okay, yes, I hurt my knee, or this bad thing happened. Oh, okay, I trust it's going to work out. I
well,
I
I'll give you a case in point. My son, as I said, is getting married, but 7 weeks before his wedding, playing basketball, he jumps, comes down, and somebody's foot lands on top of his and breaks every bone in his ankle and his foot. And
Mm,
so now we don't know, is he in a wheelchair going down the aisle, or will he actually be able to allow to walk going down the aisle?
mhm,
And they had planned, a month before and a month after the wedding to take off and do things, climb mountains. He proposed on a mountain. They're getting married on top of Grouse Mountain, so all this activity that they were going to do. And it's like, yes, it's okay to get mad because those things have now been taken away from you. But you don't look at it as, oh, why me? You look at it as, okay, what's next? What can I do? And I feel that so much people focus in, you've got to do this, you should do that, you should do that. No, but that's what you do and you do well. That's not my strength, not my forte. I need to concentrate or look at what I do well. I don't need to be the jack of all trades. And I don't need to feel less than because I'm inadequate in that area when I can feel more enriched and abundant in what I do in this area.
I agree with you so strongly on this. I worked with the developmentally disabled, which
Mhm.
is a label, and I use that label.
I have a grandson with Down syndrome, so yes, yes.
But I worked with adults with developmental disabilities for many, many years
Mhm.
in one of my physician capacities. And I learned very quickly that we're all disabled. It's just very arbitrary where you draw the line.
Yes,
But I also learned, and in care planning is for many of these individuals is assisting them in and around the things they can't do
right.
for themselves, or they can't do them well. And I would always say, well, what can this person do?
Yes.
Let's focus on that. And when you're sharing the story about your son injuring his ankle, I was thinking, we plan, God laughs. Uh,
I know. Oh boy, does he.
I'm sure you've heard that before, but
Oh yeah.
it's so true. And when we can, sort of go with the flow. You were
Yep,
saying,
yep.
like water.
Mhm.
It's like our lives are a lot easier because some of the things that we struggle with, they're they're things we cause to ourselves.
Yeah.
I say the chains that bind us are self-forged. It's
Yes.
true. It's
Because
like,
you're trying to live up to this expectation and dictation of society, and we're not truly looking at our true worth of what we're really here to do. What is our gift to contribute? Instead, we're trying to fit into somebody else because we're comparing and competing.
yeah. Well, one of my all-time favorite quotes, and I'm not sure you've heard this one, is Oscar Wilde's "Be yourself, everyone else is taken."
Yes. And I love Oscar Wilde. I mean, he was, I mean, look at what the repression he was up against. And
Yeah.
still to this day, how many people in the LGBTQ community are up against this. But, when we look at humanity, it doesn't matter black, white, pink, yellow, polka dot, we're all up against something. And that something, most of the time, is societal judgment. And if we let go of that and go, I am happy with my instrument and who I am and what I contribute, my soul, heart, and spirit, mind and body is as one in my own enrichment and abundance, then it doesn't matter what the outside thinks.
Right. And it's like I can only take ownership of how I think and feel about myself. I
Exactly.
can't demand anyone think of me the way I want them to think of
Yeah.
me, or I think they should think of me. Should, of course, is such a dangerous word
Yes.
because
Yes.
all judgment.
Yes.
Uh,
It's demand. You should.
it's it's silly when you distill it to, the beautiful way that you put it. You love yourself. I wrote a piece, and I think I had sent it to you, called the Ocean and the Cup Part Two. The part one was really about the ocean being the essence, the infinite essence of God, and we have a cup full of that, in this sacred vessel, this container that is our mind body.
Hmm.
And it's easy to get into the false thinking that because the cup has some chips and cracks and flaws, and I know you talked about that Japanese art
I
form,
do.
they put the gold in and
Yeah,
everything.
no, no, I say put love. Let love be the sealer.
So we focus on our flaws, or
Yes.
what the judgments we make about ourselves as somehow deficiencies,
Yes.
the what we tell ourselves as a story other people are thinking about us, or judgments they're making on us. But when you get to the point where you say, hey, uh, the potter, God, made this cup. This
Yes.
body mind is a sacred vessel and is every bit the expression of divinity as the cup full of ocean that it holds.
Exactly.
Then you have
Appreciation, gratitude.
then you've accepted yourself
Yeah,
as having some human limitations. When there's teaching, that I think a lot of people are familiar with about Christ, that Christ was fully human and fully divine. Well, that doesn't mean that he didn't have some human flaws.
right.
His full humanity included the complete breadth and depth of the human experience.
And those flaws is are those beautiful cracks in the bowl. I call it flawsome. It's a word I discovered a few years ago, which I think is wonderful. We all flawsome. We can be awesomeness in our flaws because they make us unique. And I say instead of putting your cracks and bowls back together or feeling that you're shattered, put it back together with self-love. Because that cup now is so strong and it can take an abundance amount of love and let it overflow.
It's absolutely unique.
Hmm.
Your
Hmm.
soul incarnated into this body mind to have this set of
Yes.
experiences, and it is unique to you.
Yeah.
Why would you diss that? Why, and go back to working with the developmentally disabled. Why would we ever think that this human sacred vessel is less than someone else? That's like a completely that's a belief system we need to abandon.
Erase, oh, totally erase. And there's a wonderful young lady with Down syndrome. Um, that has a whole video out there. Don't assume I can't, because maybe I will. And,
Mm.
we're seeing more and more, I've interviewed so many people with autism or parents of autistic children, and many of the time they're incredibly gifted and they're really focused, and they're very selective of who's around them. Look at the lessons right there. What is your gift? Are you focused on it? And are you selected of the energies that you have around us? There's a lot for us to learn from them. Why are we demanding that everybody be like us? And when we look at humanity, we're broken. I'm sure you've heard me say, because I do shamelessly promote this, Our Forgotten Children book, because the book is about bringing awareness of the systems that are letting our children down. It's 15 people that are contributing to the book and what we can do differently. Our Forgotten Seniors is coming out. Our Forgotten Children next year will come out with book 2. The reason why I was so passionate about putting that out there is that in the 12 years of doing this, and I'm nearly 70, and all the years of counseling and everything else that I've done through the years, it all goes back to that insecure child that felt abandoned, not heard, not appreciated, not given the encouragement they needed. And when we look at the way society demands of us, we have this beautiful essence of a child when they're born, the wonderment and the discovery and the adventurism. We send them to school to conform, to fit into a box, to behave and do it this way. No, you can't do it that way. And then we wonder why we have disconnected, delusional adults that are lost and don't know where they're going.
Well, my wife's a retired K through 5 school teacher, so amen, sister, with the education system, because the idea of taking all these different shaped pegs and trying to fit them all into a round hole, or
Yes.
make them all fit into a round hole, it basically is attempting to
Sheeple.
somehow
Control.
reduce their
Yes.
unique aspects. And in a way, it's not only a story that people begin to absorb about themselves,
Hmm.
but it's someone else's story about them,
Yeah.
and they haven't discovered, or
Mm.
they've been chastised for being, quote, different. Well, we're all different.
Yes.
Two of us
That's
are
what
the same.
life is
That's
like a
something
box of chocolates.
yes, that's something to celebrate.
Yeah.
That's interesting. 2 days, 2 days in a row, Forrest Gump came up. I have to
There
think
was a lot to learn from Forrest Gump. There was
a
so
third,
much to learn from that.
a third time, and it's more than just a little synchronicity.
Yeah.
So maybe I have to rewatch that movie. Maybe I have to go have some chocolate.
Yeah, yeah, maybe, and be willing to try the different chocolates.
Yes,
They may not all be, I don't like this one. That's okay. That doesn't mean that chocolate's bad. It's just not your preference, right?
yeah.
And there's something you have in your intro there, which I love the word of, and I'm going to back it a little bit by how I look at fear. Fear is there's the common sense fear. That sensible fear. Be careful. Don't walk in front of us. No hand in the fire. Be careful who you're around. What is their energy for you or against you? That's common sense fear that's looking out for you.
Mm,
But when instead of being fearful of the unknown, but we become wanderers of the unknown,
mm,
all right? And we decide to explore the possibilities and what's next. And how can I be a part of it? What can I learn or contribute from this? Fear's got our back, but
yeah.
it's not in the driver's seat.
Yes, yes. Excellent. Beautifully stated. I don't have anything to add to that. I mean,
But then you call yourself the wanderer and the pondering, for many years I was the hare. I had a vision and I just want to get it done. Let's get to the finish line and build it. And now
mm,
I've become the tortoise. And as being the tortoise, I'm taking my sweet time. I'm gathering one show at a time. 3,700 shows up here now.
wow.
One show at a time, one beautiful essence of wisdom at a time. And I'm gathering it along the way, and it's become more rooted and more enriched with more growth and more abundance because I'm not in a hurry. Now, life as we get older, we realize there is more, less is more. Slow
Yeah,
down, you get more done.
yeah,
We realize that when we're young, of course, we just want to put into sixth gear and zoom along to everything with that exuberance. But I think this is where, if we're young and we listen to the elders and the wisdom that they've acquired along the way and learn, my motto of the podcast, listen, learn, and apply. If
yeah.
we listen and we learn from their experiences and their skills and we apply it into our energy and our vision for the future, imagine how wonderful that would be.
Yeah, I'd love to expand on this just a little bit. I made up a word, podfobble. I'm a podfobbler.
Yeah, I like
My
that.
definition of that is idle, waste time at doing non-productive things. Of course, it's not a waste of time
No,
because doing nothing is doing something. It's
yes.
one of those Zen paradoxes, a
Again, it's a
koan.
allow,
Yeah.
allow things to happen.
Well, it's spending time in being.
Yes.
We're all doing this dance of doing and being, and our society and the cultural things reinforce doing, being more productive, getting
Mm,
stuff done, blah 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 blah, and we don't uh, give ourselves, I think, enough time to drop into being
uh-huh.
and discover that inner self and that interior life that is very meaningful and adds a lot of context to go about doing stuff from a different perspective.
Yes.
um, not so much to achieve this and achieve that for ego gratification and aggrandizement, but because we are driven internally from our heart that this is what we have to share and we feel passionate about it. And of course, how could we not do it? Um,
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah.
I completely agree with you. And, I feel, one of the things that people have forgotten is that there's gratitude that they don't come from, but also they've forgotten to find joy in the simple things in life. And I say, like, take a walk in the woods when the wind is blowing. Listen to the trees rustle. They're speaking to you. Listen to the ocean lap onto the shore. Listen to the children's laughter. Watch a dog chasing a stick. If you can't have a heart smile, if you can't feel connected in that, then there's something more seriously wrong because nature is always something to ignite us and all of our beautiful senses and essence of who we are and bring us back to what really is important.
Again, I'm sounding like a broken record, just agreeing with you so strongly. Here's my own examples. I mentioned I have a lake across the
Yes,
street. I
yes.
walk around there pretty regularly. But if I'm walking around there saying, "Oh, later I've got to do this,"
Yeah.
or "Oh, that happened earlier today or yesterday. What was that all about?" It's like my whole experience of that walk is not
None and
living
void.
the moment. If
Yes.
I'm walking and I see an ant and I stop and I say, "Oh, I wonder what that ant is up to." I'm walking with a sense of curiosity, and
Yeah.
that always opens up this notion of wonder. Um, Again, that's the context of doing that walk. The content is the same. It's the same walk, but the experience is so different. And unfortunately, I think people are not stepping back and appreciating how easy it is
Hmm.
to um, just drop into whatever circumstances you're in, disengage the part of your mind that's going backwards and the part
Yeah.
that's going forward, and just be now, be here now. And so many spiritual teachers teach this.
Yes. The
It,
gift of the present is in the now.
yeah, that's all we have.
Yeah.
All we have is the now moment. And we're creating that reality. Just like when I saw an alligator that wasn't there. That
Hmm.
was my now moment.
Yeah.
But you know, it changed, and I had a different experience, and it's not
Well, you
one.
allowed yourself to see it because some people go, no, I saw an alligator and that pipe is an alligator because they refuse to see what's in
Yeah,
front of them. And that is something that, you're denying yourself because our truth of what is, it always comes from the larger I. And if we are always in denial and always in conflict, then all we're going to do is fight what we see.
yeah. Well, again, it's how we interpret
Mm,
stimuli, and whether they're visual stimuli or something in your head. Someone said something to me, and I interpret that as they were being disrespectful, as opposed to, oh, I interpret that as they were curious about why I thought that. I mean,
mm,
that that's just a completely different interpretation, and we're always telling ourselves stories,
mhm.
stories, stories, stories that may or may not be true. You
And
know?
I do know that sometimes the chatter in your head can be overwhelming. And like I'm at kind of at a crossroads of decisions at the present moment, and I know that okay, I need to remove my head from the equation altogether. And sometimes going into nature, the chatter can still get, until nature takes over. I'm going off to see Twister this weekend. Right.
Mm,
And I know that I'll have a couple of hours being whirlwinded around where all I am is immersed into the movie and I'll come out. And I've always found for myself when I remove myself from my thoughts, I
mm,
come out and then what really matters comes to the forefront. Because sometimes that chatter just goes on and on and on. Okay, I need to switch you off. And if I can't switch you off in nature, I'm going to give you something to entertain you so
yeah.
that the truth can come to the forefront and override you.
Yeah, I think of it as a bubbling cauldron.
Yes.
It's bubbling along, and if I'm studying it, all I see are the bubbles. But
Yes.
if I walk away and then I say, "Oh, look what percolated up to the surface. How
Right.
about that?" Oh, I'm going to reach in and grab that.
And where does that chatter come from? It goes back to, oh, the what if, or the challenges in front of it. But what if I can't do this, or what if I can't do that? And it's like I've always had this chat with the universe. All the experiences that I've had in life led me to the path that I have been on for the last 12 years, doing the work they want me to do. And I feel completely connected to that and completely aligned with that. So, whatever challenges I have that may get in the way of that, I just have to say to the universe, help me unravel it so that I can continue with my work because I don't want to spend the energy on that because that's going to interfere.
Well, and I say this not to, pat you on the back. I'm just giving
Oh, no,
you
it's not
my,
easy to
my,
do, but
my no, but you're very authentic. You're very genuine, and it comes across to me, and I can read energy somewhat, and it comes across, through this medium. So your light shines brightly, sister.
Oh, thank you. This is what everything, as I said, that I went through in life, they were chosen for me to do. And when you talk about, quote, these disabilities, I have ADD and I have dyslexia, and I left school at grade 7. So I'm
Mm,
not at all academic. And it was always, she'll never succeed in life. Let's just hope she has a good marriage. For a long time, I carried that thinking, nobody ever expects anything of me. And then it was like, well, nobody ever expects anything of me, so it'll be a surprise whatever I achieve. Right? So it allowed me to explore. And then I started seeing a common theme through my life. I was a disruptor in
mm,
every business I went to. And the disruption was of what they were not paying attention to. And it was always around HR, it was always around service. Uh,
mm,
and and it disrupted it because, they didn't want to look at that. That was my job. I seemed to go into that job to point that out, and then I moved on. That was just the way that it went, and I didn't realize I was being that. And in a sense, podcasting, you can call it a disruption. Yeah, I'm disrupting the negativity that's holding you back and showing you the possibilities of what you can be and who you are meant to be. Because if each and every one of us decides to rise up to that higher consciousness of who we are as beautiful divine souls, we will see that peace and that love in the world that we're all chasing. We've got to be the love. We've got to be the peace. That means that we have got to do the work to rise up to that higher consciousness, because that's where the solution lies.
Uh, Again, strong agreement. Be the change you
Yeah.
seek. And the problems of the world have occurred, created from a certain level of consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not going to be solved using the same
No.
type of consciousness, which uh, is highly divisive, focuses on fear, separation, exploitation, all
Limitation.
sorts of limitation, and so on and so forth. So if we collectively raise
Mm-hmm.
consciousness, then what emerges from that is a new paradigm of harmony. In
Mm-hmm.
my, at least that's the way I think we're going. I think that we are evolving as a species, both individually and collectively. What are we evolving towards? People use different terms, but they're all similar to me. Homo spiritus,
Mm-hmm.
Homo illuminatus, Homo sapien 2.0, if want to use a more technical thing. And that is, aligned with a 5D reality rather
Mm-hmm.
than a 3D reality.
Yes,
I'm guessing all these terms are familiar to your listeners. Um, but it's a choice.
it
And
is a
some
choice.
people are going to choose, and that's fine. Each soul is on their own journey. They're going to choose to remain in a 3D way. And some people will go to Robo Sapien, where there's an interface of nanobots and other sorts of technology that is to enhance the human body and mind and so on and so forth. You already see stuff like Neuralink
Mm-hmm.
that Elon Musk is company
Mm-hmm.
where we're interfacing with machines. And I don't know, I'm not saying bad or good. I'm just saying it's a choice that I think all of us are going to have to make
Yeah, yeah,
as this evolutionary arc progresses, and it's unstoppable. The evolutionary
yeah, I
arc
agree
is
with you.
towards expanding love. I mean
Mm.
that we can't stop that.
No.
And that's why I'm wildly optimistic about the future. Not to say that there's not going to be turmoil, and I think in the short run, in particular, there's going to be a lot of turmoil.
Yeah,
But
when you're house cleaning, there's a lot of dust and dirt before you get it all cleaned up, right? We're in that process right now.
yes, and when not that I've given birth myself, but there's some pain in labor.
Oh boy,
That's
ain't there?
real labor. But then you hold that newborn, and you
And the pain's gone. Yeah.
have all the new potential that
Yes.
that newborn baby
Yes.
represents. Uh,
Yes.
and
And how
that's
it changes you. That's the thing. You look at this newborn and the wonderment of what will their lives will be. But and people, oh, it's just a chemical reaction. I know I like this chemical reaction because who you become, I suddenly, as a mother holding that child,
right.
yes, you've got the responsibility. This is one thing about being a grandparent that's so wonderful,
Yeah, I have
right?
four grandchildren.
Right. I've got only two right now, and it's the beauty of it is that I can just gobble up the essence of who they are and guide them on their way. I'm not responsible for 24/7. Been there, done that, right?
Right, right, right.
And I don't have that responsibility. So now I have the joy of enjoying them as babies and things like that, which, and youngsters on their discovery, which is wonderful. But, I often refer our transition from 3D, and I firmly believe that the 4D bridge has already severed from the 3D. Those that made the choice to be in the 3D will be left behind. The choice was to get onto that 4D and make that choice to walk towards the 5D. And now so many are so much higher. And we're realizing, yes, we want to be up there. How do we get there? But the journey in that 4D to that 5D is much like carrying yourself those 9 months, much like the labor of birthing yourself, and much like that rediscovery of you as an infant in where you are now and what is possible for your life with all that you know. And I think that's the beauty of it. Don't be afraid to give birth to yourself.
Well, I like the way you put that. I like to talk in terms of self-care as
Mm,
being a potent means of self-transformation and self-love
mm,
being the most potent
yes.
type of self-care. And I think that the more we you know, embrace ourselves with love, warts and all,
Yes.
cracks in the vessel
Yes.
and chips and what have you, wear and tear.
Yes. And there's a lot of it.
The more we can recognize, which is recognize, to rethink who we are, then I think those are the ways that help us move further along the journey. And I also think that having these kinds of soul-centered conversations and exposing ourselves not only passively but actively to people who are walking this journey, and we can stop and share, compare notes.
Yeah.
There's a force amplification that occurs with that that is really helps us in our journey. That oh, that what that person said hadn't occurred to me, but boy, does that get my truth resonator going.
Yes.
That
Yes.
helped. That helped me. I
Yeah.
see I see it with new eyes
Mm,
because we're all walking in the spirit, but
yes.
to a lesser or greater extent. It's all there.
Yeah.
We just have to,
Plug
uh,
in.
you know, we just have to rediscover it.
Yeah.
And that's part of the fun and the excitement
It is. It's like
of
a
this
new
whole
birth,
thing.
right? Not only just a new birth of what is possible and where the wonderment of that journey that it can take us, but also we now have knowledge that we know how to use to help
Hmm.
us on our journey. That's
Well,
where the wisdom is, right? The wisdom is knowing how to use the knowledge and what knowledge is relevant on this new journey.
yeah, that's the application part of,
Mm.
I think you said you had a
Listen,
podcast.
learn, and apply.
Right. Right. So yeah, if if you um, see the light, but then kind of keeping it under a table,
Yeah,
then you're not
yeah.
really applying it. You got to
Yeah.
hold that light and illuminate, and we all illuminate one another, and that's that much more illumination.
Yes, because that your light shining bright sheds light on a path that they cannot yet see.
Right. And their shining light, because we're all mirrors of
Yes,
one another,
exactly.
they enable us to see things about ourselves that maybe have been in darkness or have been hidden,
Right.
or need to have some light shone upon them.
Now we've gone off this beautiful journey of igniting heart and souls, but of course you are a prolific writer as well.
Mhm.
You have the Serpent Rising and the revolutionary fiction. You've got the Healthwise, numerous other books and also anthologies, etc., that you've been a part of. But let's just talk a little bit about Healthwise, and then we'll also talk about the other books because I know that you've said that there's very much intertwinement between them.
Yeah, well, Healthwise was a companion piece that had more spiritually themed content than my first book, which was called Pathways to Health, where I just gave a different conceptual framework to understand health. But I didn't have, I incorporated some spiritual things into that, but I had a desire to say more.
Mm,
And like that deep well of peace thing that I mentioned earlier, that's in Healthwise. That actually came about from a series of columns that I had written. I had a column for, I think, 3 years, a health and wellness column that included traditional things, but as well as alternative things. And then I wrote some little essays, as it were, that came from my heart, and I just compiled them all into this little book, and
Hmm.
I called it Health Wise, integral lessons in transformation.
And of course, people don't understand actually health is in the wisdom. It isn't just, being wise about your health. It's in the wisdom back to that surrender and allow and become, that allows us, because back to that stagnancy, when we have stagnancy in our water and our oxygen and our blood doesn't flow, it causes things to break down. And anxiety is one of the biggest killers, and that breaks down our health. So the more we are in spirit, in soul and heart alignment, the more fluidity and flow within our body, and the more we're able to actually be healers of our own body, mind, heart, and soul.
Yeah, well, a lot of people don't realize the word health has shares the same roots with the words whole and holy.
Hmm.
And I don't think we conceptualize health enough in terms of whole and holy.
Hmm.
Holy, of course, suggests a spiritual component. And since if the core of us is a spiritual core, then of
Yes.
course we have to be attending to that to be healthy. But the wholeness is really, as I think about it, more related to mental and emotional factors
Hmm.
because have disembodied parts of ourselves, or disowned would be a better
Hmm.
word. We've disowned the parts of ourselves that we don't like, the shadow aspects.
Hmm.
And yet, that's part of who we are. The idea is not to get rid of them, but to love them.
Yeah.
That's part of who I am. This happened to me. I can't take that away.
Right.
I'm not going to, cast myself as a victim because those things happened. No, that's part of my soul's journey. I made a soul contract when I
Yes.
incarnated, and it's like, okay, I can accept. We talked about allowing. Acceptance is so much
Yeah.
the same energy,
Yeah.
and we talked about this in terms of productivity and doing stuff, but you can either lead, follow, or get out of the way.
Hmm.
Or you get out of the way, I think the further you go.
Hmm.
And if you can embrace yourself in a whole way, you will realize health that has perhaps escaped you. A lot
Yes.
of times people are passing judgment. Oh, I'm too fat, or oh, I have this ailment, or fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Those are pieces of content
Yeah.
that if you focus on the content and miss the context, you are an incarnated soul. It's incredible
Yes.
in a human body. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And if you can't appreciate that, you might struggle with achieving this type of health that you
Right.
want to achieve, the optimum health, the we
Mind,
talk
body,
about
heart, and soul. Hmm.
enjoy. We
Hmm.
want to enjoy life. I want to enjoy life.
Hmm.
I want
Hmm.
to be in joy
Yes. I like
every
that.
moment.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm going to enjoy life as a
Yeah.
result of that. How could you not?
Exactly. I look at the Invictus Games and also, the Special Olympics, and you look at all of those people that probably were athletes beforehand, and then, something happened, or they were born a certain way, but they just, I'm not going to let it get in my way. I've interviewed people with no arms and people with complete burn victims and this and that. And yet they had to discover their courage. They had to discover their strength. They had to discover their abilities. And then it was, where's my passion? I know what I cannot do, and I simply can't do that. But what can I do? How passionate am I about it? And how much am I going to immerse myself in that journey to discover how far I can go? And when you look at them, they become such an inspiration because we've put the limitation. Now, I know my limitations of what I can and cannot do, but I focus on what I can do. And if we stop being the limitation and instead make discovery of what we really can do. You know, the triangleist in the orchestra is just as important as everyone else, right? Everybody has a role.
Well, you used a word that was on the tip of my tongue, inspiration. And, I think when we aspire to be all that we are,
Mm,
it is inspirational. We inspire other people.
yeah.
And when we are true to ourselves and living authentically, it is not only a role model for other people, but it is inspirational.
Yes. Inspiration begets invitation, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
And so, it's always I mean, there's so many people to be inspired by
Yeah.
who have achieved so much,
Yes.
often with limitations or against certain odds and so on. But even just the
Hmm.
everyday person who is filled with joy, and shares that, they are an inspiration that goes under the radar. People
Right.
don't.
Exactly. You know, we have obviously at the Olympics, we had Celine Dion,
Yeah.
who thought she would never sing again. And there she sang in her native language. And it just became such an inspiration to people, not only a triumph for her, but for others to believe that no matter what the obstacle is in front of us, if the passion, the conviction, and the reason why, what is your because? If it's fame and fortune and money, wrong reason. If it's because this is what you are compelled to do, this is your instrument, and you're going to play it and no one's going to stop you. It invites other people to believe, I can too. Then you have Simone at the last Olympics had to drop out because
Right.
mentally I cannot cope with that. And there's so much criticism. Oh, you just got to push through. What kind of athlete are you? Da 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 da, placing value on her own mental health. And as she said, she, has therapy every single day. And look what she's just done, most awarded medalist in the world. Those are the huge achievements that become the big spotlights. But I think they then, in their light, shed light on the achievements that the everyday person is doing and lets other people see them differently.
Yes. Um, it's very easy for other people to pass judgment
Oh, yeah.
on what you do or don't do.
Mm,
But I like to say, invest in process, trust in outcome.
yeah.
All you can do is, what opportunities do you have at this moment? Um, it's good to have goals.
Yeah.
I know, I said before we laughed, we plan, God laughs.
Yes.
Um, sometimes goals become our prisons because
Yes.
you're always looking towards, well, where am I? Am I closer to that goal? And you've missed everything that
Yeah. Yeah.
on this part of your
Yeah.
journey because your eyes are focused someplace else. And this is where we live our lives. We live our lives in the day-to-day moment,
Yeah.
like this moment that we're sharing.
Hmm.
How precious is that? How fantastic is it that we have this ability to even have this kind of communication?
Exactly. And this is where we're going. We're looking at how technology is enhancing our ability to do that exploration of
Yeah.
higher consciousness.
Yes, yes.
And, I think for all of us, it's nobody gets through life unscathed. Nobody. And it's what you do with it, right? And yes, you can have your little pity party for a moment because sometimes things happen to you and they've just taken away from you all those visions and dreams. And it's like, okay, cry it out, bottom out the emotion, and then go, okay, I surrender.
Right.
I allow what's next. And absolutely everybody that I've interviewed through the years, some of them have come from so much horrific, horrific things that have happened to them. They made a choice to go through the process of healing, to discover their strength, their ability, and who they are today, and what they stand for today, and how they can serve others. And that kind of courage is, I think, the epitome because they decided not to be the victim where they could have ridden those coattails all their lives. But they say, no, I refuse to be the victim. There is more to me than that.
and that's the choice.
Yeah.
Because yeah, life is going to present us with challenges. But when you said I surrender, I immediately thought of Michael Singer's book, The Surrender Experiment. Now, most people know him for his work with The Untethered Soul, which is
Hmm.
just one of my all-time favorite books. But the surrender experience is he just says he's going to surrender to whatever happens, and a lot of bad stuff happens, but it always works out. And
Yes.
this is the point that
When you allow.
trying to control stuff you can't control and just kind of go with the flow.
Yeah.
It's easier said than done, but the more you do it, the
Yeah.
easier it gets to be.
You trust it. Going back to trust. You trust that process. And it's I will admit I woke up this morning with angst, and I have suffered through clinical depression through my life, and I think a lot of it is environmental depression, empathic depression, very often,
Mm.
and I was feeling the heaviness, and I had a wonderful call before you with somebody who is bottom line a carer. No matter what else she's done. And then with you igniting the heart and soul and the consciousness, my two favorite subjects, along with the heart. And I am fed. I'm rejuvenated. I'm back into it's okay. It doesn't matter how dark you felt it was this morning. The light has shone through.
Well,
Right.
that's that force amplification. There's a concept of conversation stewardship where often in conversation, someone is trying to get your energy. They're
Yes.
talking about themselves, and then when it comes time to talk about you, they're not interested. And so,
Hmm.
an energy vampire, as it were.
Yes, yes, yes.
And often, there's ways people are trying to control energy in
Hmm.
conversation. But when you connect to source,
Yes.
and that's what you're bringing into conversation, and that's what the other person is bringing into conversation, the energy that is amplified from that.
It starts to
It,
dance.
yes, it's like it makes your heart sing.
Yes.
Symphony, it's beautiful music.
Yes.
I can't make this music by
No.
myself,
No.
but when I have so it's melody and harmony,
Mm.
and it's beautiful music. So thank you, Maestro.
I heard Jay Shetty interviewed Trevor Noah, one of my favorites. I love Trevor Noah because I find him, although he's a comedian, he's just incredibly well balanced in his thought process and the way he sees things. And it's a wonderful interview if anybody has a chance to see it, because Trevor is very, very profound and talks openly and honestly about his own depression and struggles. And that's one of the reasons why he left the Daily Show. And Jay Shetty, he asked Jay Shetty, "What is your purpose?" And he said, "This is it. What I'm doing right now." And of course, I completely relate to that, because no matter what I've done in my life or whatever I achieved or didn't achieve along the way, it has led to this purpose. And when you can get to that point in your life, why are you doing it? Because. And you can really talk to the because, and you can feel the because you've become the because. Then you know, I'm home doing what I'm meant to be doing. Be willing to take the journey to get there.
Yes, and I encourage people who are somehow struggling or um, haven't found that passion is to try to have a conversation with themselves about what their purpose is. I
Mm.
wrote a statement of purpose back in 2008, and it has provided me with a North Star.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
compass that I navigate. And sometimes when I am faced with decisions and I'm unsure, I just read my statement of purpose and say,
Mm,
well, does this align with that?
mm.
Oh yeah, well, of course I'm going to do it. Or, yeah, that's not on this statement of purpose
Yeah.
here. I'm not going to invest in that or put my
Yeah,
energy there. That's not the
exactly.
decision I'm going to make. So it is helpful as a way of navigating life on a day-to-day basis to be clear, have clarity around what your purpose. Why am I here? What
Exactly.
what am I here to do?
Right. And I've been true to it. You talked about goals, where the universe gives me visions. And so for me, I put it together in a graphic. And 6, 7 years ago, they gave me a vision, and I'm kind of partway doing it, stepping into the books. I never would have thought, well, I did do one in 2017, ebook, but stepping into the books, um, I call them pod books because podcasts and books alignment together. And then, the mentorship programs and eventually the educational program. It didn't mean I had to do it all at once. It was a vision that made sense of the evolution of the work that I'm doing. The main
Right.
core will always be the podcasting. But even this year, because I moved, looking after grandchildren, little one was quite sick for a while, written my own memoir, produced this book, and was in two other books. I
Mm,
was about to jump into another book, and then everything said, not now, not now, not
mm,
now. And so we've postponed it to spring. And I think so many people say, but you said you were going to do it. Why aren't you doing it? Timing is everything. Trust the feeling. If it doesn't feel right, it doesn't mean it's wrong. It just maybe mean the time is wrong, or maybe the person, the people you wanted to do it with is wrong. But pause, take a breath, look at it. Why does it feel wrong? Okay, no, the idea that you were given by the universe is right, but maybe it's the wrong time.
sure.
And that's actually with this book. This was 5 years coming into it, and all the people that I thought were going to be in the book had retired, moved on, doing this and that. Suddenly, all the people I'm interviewing are all children based. They came to me,
Mm.
right? And then from there, ended up in the book. So thank you, universe. Step out of the way and let the universe guide. It will provide you when the time is right.
Yes. I like to garden, and
Mm.
you might want to have a ripe tomato, right away, but
Yeah.
you have to germinate the seed and care for the plant,
Yeah.
um, and then eventually you have that. But
Yes.
that's why if you invest in the process, but
Hmm.
I'm mindful of there's a time to reap, a time to
Yes.
sow, a time to
Yes. Yes.
whatever
And that's
that
when you pay attention to the present,
yeah,
right? And I think when we're feeling it doesn't feel right because we're not sent a chord as to what is important right now.
yes. Well, it is a feeling, and people need to pay attention to those
Yes.
feelings. And they try to figure it out with their head when in fact that's not where the answer is. The answer is in that heart space or in that gut, whatever. Because
Yes.
we that's a feeling sensing.
Well,
Uh,
that's what I say the soul
part.
is. It's the feelers, the wisdom feeler,
Yeah.
right? It's the wisdom that you feel that resonates with the heart truth that's given to the spirit action for you to know what is relevant in the mind.
Mm,
That is clarity in the moment. And if you feel your knowledge, don't think your knowledge. Because if we just rely on thought, then I think we're limited and we can talk ourselves down the rabbit hole or, into something. But when we feel the wisdom, then we know which knowledge is relevant in this moment.
mm,
If
yes.
I think that I know I'm going to screw it up, if I step back and trust the feeling, okay, I hear you.
There's that word trust again.
Yes, exactly. Trust and allow, right? What have we been taught as human beings is got to be in control, got to be in control. And I say the best control you can have is to surrender the control.
Once again, how can I say I agree with you so far?
But what it means is that the consciousness that you've path you've chosen and I've chosen, not only is there a synergy, but it's part of the orchestra, right? We're instruments in this orchestra. And it shows how we can all play together while respecting each other's instrument. And we've got to understand a lot of people oneness think it is surrendering to the Borg and becoming mindless, right? Oneness is bringing the essence of all you are to the collective so that we can be that garden of abundance, which is actually my speech for my son's wedding, is talking about the planting of the garden of what will grow over years and what is seasonal. And don't forget to get rid of the weeds. So, we can draw whatever analogy we want, but it's paying attention to what is our because. My because is I want to see consciousness rise. I want to see everybody step into love of self, love of life, love
Mm,
of who they are and what they're doing. Can you imagine all that enrichment and abundance floating out there?
yes, I can.
Right,
Imagine,
exactly. So that's our
heaven
driving
on earth,
force.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, it's um, it's within our means to achieve it.
It is.
And
It
we're
is.
we're doing our little parts.
Hmm.
I like to say I'm doing my part to make the world a wee bit better.
Exactly. You know, the ocean is made one drop at a time. The beach is one grain of sand at a time. And it's like, how do we all come together to create that beach? No grain of sand is better than the other. It's just what maybe we might be contributing more because we're further ahead,
Yeah.
right? And it's you know, the conductor has a huge responsibility of bringing all those right musicians together, so that they will play together in harmony. And you'll always have somebody that is leading. Well, for me, the universe is the conductor, right?
Mm.
Bringing the right people together. Let's pay attention.
Well, I'm smiling because I'm thinking life's a beach.
With a nice beach with water lapping on our feet and a good beer in our hand, right?
There you have
I
it.
could do with
Good
that right
time.
now. Definitely. And I also think find out what's your conduit, like water. Immersing yourself in water is an incredible conduit. The
Mm.
wind is wonderful at clearing away the cobwebs and just bringing you about the clarity. And the wind, water, and trees are huge for me because the trees, the forest, the synergy of the way they talk to each other and the way they talk to us is way beyond head intellect, it's soul intellect. And we know when we trust these things around us, we realize we're always being supported.
Yes, yes. Well, I had a lovely walk outside an hour or so before we had this lovely, time together. And, it's just appreciating
Yeah,
the wind and the sun and the clouds and the grass and the trees and the water because it's
yeah,
right around a lake.
yes.
All the elements were there, you know?
Well, those are the three things that are my driving force. And I have the ocean just over there.
Mm.
I have trees all around me and a monkey puzzle tree outside, very often deer in my garden. But I am
Oh,
3 to 4 minutes from everything,
yeah.
right? And a
Where,
lot of wind.
where are you living
I'm
now?
in Nanaimo on Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada.
Oh,
And the
yes.
island itself has got
Mm.
a wonderful vibe. It really
Yes.
has. It's a very spiritual vibe.
I have a friend who lives there part-time on, I think, that same island. And right now he's in Australia for a year. So he's not living there.
No.
Mm.
I mean, this island, although we call it a little island, could just about put England in it. It's quite big and it's forest. If you don't like green, don't come here because there's trees everywhere, lakes everywhere.
Yes,
And it's
that
very, very nature based.
yes, that's what, and he's a poet and he
Mm,
writes occasionally using things that he sees, that
yes.
whether the trees, eagles, other wildlife, and
Yeah.
he's a deeply spiritual man.
And this is the place to be. So if you're looking to ignite that spirit, this is a good place to immerse yourself into. But wherever you are, even if you're in a concrete jungle, right, go and find your space that speaks to you, a space that fortifies you, a space that fills you up, and do it often. And do your very best wherever you are to make sure that you find a place where, yeah, I can catch a breath here, right? I can be amongst the chaos and I can be centered. Recognize where it is and do it often.
Yes, beautiful.
Your books, so many of them. We've only touched bases on one, and you really should come back one day and we'll talk about the others because you've written so many books, both fictional and factional.
Well, can I speak just quickly about Serpent Rising and
Yes,
Revolution?
please do.
Do we have time?
Yes.
So, the theme for this two-book series was that mankind has difficulty distinguishing truth from falsehood. So I wanted to have a main character who happens to be a very flawed young woman, 21 years old, who has PTSD. Um, the origin of her PTSD was that she was in an initiation ceremony for an ancient order of light bringers called the Candelaria. And the initiation ceremony was botched and it was very traumatic for her. And so she's been living her life out of sync with her true destiny, which is to be a light bringer. And she is the carrier of the flame of truth. And the book is really a hero's journey. The two-book series is an adventure thriller, but book one focuses more on the adventure part. And she has to go through a series of mystical chakra openings, Kundalini rising. It's got a lot of metaphysical aspects that I'm sure listeners are familiar with. And it won the 2021 Best New Age Fiction in the International
Excellent.
Book Awards. And book two is a continuation of that, but is really getting more into some of the realities about how those powerful groups that want to withhold truth for their own agenda. It's
Hmm.
about the Illuminati as wanting to establish a new world order, and they're the bad guys, as it were, and the things done to try to combat that. Yeah, a lot of, and that won the 2023 Best New Age Fiction International Book Awards. It also won a American Legacy Award, which was quite, I think, a more esteemed achievement because that involves books published from 2010 to 2023, and it won another award also. But to me, the purpose of these books, writing in fiction, is the same purpose as writing my nonfiction books,
I
which
was
is
going to say that
to
actually, yes,
elevate
yes.
consciousness, to get people thinking and examining things in ways that help them achieve a new level of awareness.
Yeah.
And we're all, as is true of the protagonists in the story, we're all trying to reach our full human
Yeah.
potential. And she has had struggles and she has had trauma and she's had difficulties that have, been handicapped, have handicapped her in a way, caused a lot of fear. And in many ways, she was running away from her life.
Hmm.
But Destiny had a different idea
Yeah.
and achieves big things. Um, I think we're all heroes and heroines of our own journey. We're all creating the story, just getting back to that ego identity, but
Hmm.
we're all creating this story. And what kind of a story do we want that to be? Do we want it to be,
Exactly.
something that you know we um, have cast ourselves as a victim or as a hero, a villain or as a
Hmm.
you
A
know
non-participant.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or are we happy just being a character in someone else's story about us?
Right.
Because they're telling our story for us is really very disempowering.
Very,
Um,
very.
when
And
we
I find for these kind of books, um, kind of, I call them factional books in many ways, because although they're written by fiction, the fact of the matter is they're relatable, right? And they draw from people through the journey, the resistance, the courage, the reveal, something within ourselves that parallels that understanding. And I very often think these kind of books actually reach more people than self-help books.
Well, yeah, I agree because it it sort of captures the right brain more than the
Mm,
left brain. The
yeah,
self-help books are more geared towards appealing to your left brain, but this, I think, appeals more to the right brain. But I would, a factional book, I like that term. I might have to steal it.
please do,
Good,
because
good writers borrow, great writers steal.
I wouldn't. I remember actually an award for Sophie's Choice. What's the actress? Kramer versus Crafer. I've gone completely blank on her actress, and I love
Oh,
it.
I'm a bad one to
Yes,
rely.
It's going to
on.
come probably once we finish the show. But if you know who we're talking about, and I remember somebody, talking about her, and she's saying, you've got to be careful. She absorbs everything and she steals everything, and it ends up in one of her movies. But that is what writing is all about. That is even what learning is all about. When something, the inspirational happens, it's the invitation for how can you use that on your own journey of life. That's the epitome of inspiration.
I don't um, have, I don't consider myself a channeler, but I think some of this material was channeled and I was just the conduit. And
We're all channelers. We just may be
well,
more
when you're in that
cognitive
flow
or not,
state,
right?
when you're in that flow state, you are
Yes.
channeling. But I have a friend who's a psychic, and she's not read the books because she's had some strokes and it's hard for her to
Mm,
read. And there are audios, narrations, but the narrators are terrible. I had nothing. So I told her, don't listen to the narrations. But she, in one of her psychic experiences, in being in a dream state with her counsel said most of what's in those books is true.
yes,
Um,
exactly. Exactly.
and and I said, next time you meet with your counsel, ask them the parts I got wrong, because I am curious what their answer is. But there's a lot more factual
Yeah, no,
information.
no, no. The question should have been, what did I get right, not wrong?
Well, there's a lot more factual information in there
Yes,
than I think most readers will recognize,
right.
and that's okay. I made up stuff along the way, and
But that's what storytelling is about, right?
yeah,
And I know that, in any my big recovery I had after narcissistic tumultuous marriage is I went down the metaphysical path and I read all these type of books that were youth based, and in them I found my ignition again of my truth because I am empathic. I've always been spiritual. I was born this way. I didn't become this way. I was born this way, but it was very hard to be this way in a world that was still very humanoid. And so for me now to be, upfront and be spiritual is who I am. But for a long time, it's who I had to suppress. So there's so much truth in these type of books of relatability that sparks something in somebody that feels as either dormant or they've had to hide, or that there is no permission to be or unaware that it was there. So I think these kind of books are very, very important in that ignition of the heart and the soul.
yes, I'm not going to say I agree. You're right.
So, having said that, my dear, how do people get hold of your books and how do they reach you? If they want to have a chat with you, they want to talk to you about your philosophy, your work, etc. And also, you do have the Vistas column 360 Nation. Tell us all about that and how people can get hold of you.
Sure. Well, I have a website, victoracquista.com. I
Can
have
you
an
spell your name for those that are listening, please, love?
Sure. Yes, VictorAquista, victoracquista.com. That's my website. And you can reach me at my email, victoracquista.com, victoracquista at
At Victor's Quest.
victoracquista.com. Pretty simple. I have Amazon author page with a batch of things on there, some short stories as well as books. I have presence on LinkedIn. The column that I write for 360 Nation is called Veritas. That's the Latin word for truth. That's where I think more of my spiritually themed content appears, and that's all that's all available to the public. There's no charge for any the 360 Nation is all for good, not for profit. I don't get paid to write those columns. It's just when I feel moved to write something that I usually, if I think it's worth sharing, that's where I
Mhm.
put it.
Of course, you're on YouTube as well under your name.
Yeah, most of my YouTube stuff, I used to have a podcast and I was narrating works from other author colleagues and so on. I wasn't showing guests, but I was guest reading their work.
Hmm.
And after a couple of years of doing that, I said, "This is just I've taken this as far as I want
Hmm.
to." I have some other things on there that worth poking around with, but most of the content I haven't put up anything fresh or new on there in quite a while on my
No.
YouTube channel.
Well, I go back 11 years on this network with over 370 shows, and so it's a library, right? And is whatever, whenever it is, it's relevant to somebody at somebody's level of journey. So,
Yeah.
wisdom is wisdom. Never discount it. Thank you. Discount it just because it's a few years old.
Well, I don't know how much of that has wisdom in it, but you know, I've sometimes have been accused of being a wise man, but I just admit to being a wise guy.
Either way, you've allowed the wisdom to come through you and guide you in your writing, in your life, in your teachings. And that's the point, is that to understand we are spiritual beings, let them drive the bus. Let the spirit drive the bus with the soul. Let it ignite with the human heart in eagerness and truth, and let that spirit get out there in action. And then our mind again will know what it needs to know. And you understand it's a tandem, but let the spirit drive.
Mm, yes. Yeah.
Otherwise, we're going to crash. We do over and over again. Thank you so much for sharing here today. It's been wonderful. We obviously are traveling the same wavelength. It is up to us on our choice on how to rise. Everything in life is a struggle to a point. But if we actually change struggle to a challenge and we're up for the challenge, and what does this challenge mean? What am I meant to discover about myself that I didn't know? Certainly, when I started podcasting, I didn't even know what a podcast was. So there has been a lot of challenges, even in putting forth this. And for us, don't be afraid of the challenge because you never know what you're going to learn about yourself along the way.
Yeah, a spiritual teacher named Matt Kahn, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with him, says, whatever arises, love that. It
Yes.
doesn't mean you have to like it.
No,
It's like
exactly.
people. You don't
Yes.
have to like them, but
Yeah.
you're loving them. And there's a lot of wisdom in that, actually,
Yes.
because
It's there for a reason.
it's there for it's
Mhm.
there to really serve us in
Yeah.
our own growth and evolution towards being all we are. And you, my friend, are such a beautiful soul. Thank you for all you're doing
Thank you.
and the way you are um, being present in the world and sharing, the wisdom, your own and other guests. It's really um, it's just such a healing balm for the world we live in.
I mean, I do it to bring forth people like yourself that are opening those doors through that inspiration, sending out that invitation, showing people how to look at things differently. And that's the whole thing. It's all about perspective. When we look at it only from one angle, we only see one angle. When we're willing to turn it around and look at it upside down, inside out, all around, we see the bigger picture. It doesn't become so intimidating, and we know where our space is and within it. So the
Mm.
more and more we have people like yourself on sharing different perspectives, the more and more rounder our wisdom and knowledge and things become. So thank you.
Okay. Well, namaste.
Next time, folks, don't forget, it's all about you, all about the rising of you and your beautiful consciousness. And we need you in the world. We need you in that higher elevation. Don't be afraid to take it. Come on in. The waters are great. Until next time, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. There are so many more for you here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. Just go to the podcast tag at the top there and you will see all the many genres and all 3,000 shows ready for your listening. We are here to serve you, to help you on your journey of life, and we know that through inspiration it begets invitation. We are supported by you, the listeners, and those that we interview. Anything that you can spare us in donation would be greatly accepted, and we do hope that you enjoy the next show.